Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, Jerry.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here today. We have author J.M. Mitchell. There's a couple of different ways he describes his books. National park mysteries, political suspense, thrillers. I'm really excited to dive in. I love being in the parks and being outdoors and hiking, and I love a good mystery too. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with your first book or your most recent book?
Well, let me give it the backstory. We'll probably speak to the first book as much as we need to, and then we can focus on the most recent one. My protagonist is a ranger named Jack Chastain, and he was a fellow. He is, you might say, hardwired to the mission of the agency. He's very dedicated, but he lost a political battle in Montana and gets moved to New Mexico, where the problems start all over again. And he tries to avoid getting pulled into those things in the first book and can't. And that backstory carries into all of the stories. They're written to be standalone stories, but the backstory carries into all of them. And Jack, as he deals with solving some mystery in each of the books, he finds himself getting a little healing from what had happened way back in Montana. But each of these stories is written to be standalone. And the most recent one is Migrations of Butterflies and Lies, this story here.
I love that title. It's a very eerie title.
The filter's messing with the cover there, but it's, I apologize. Yeah, thank you. It went through several different titles. I always have a good time coming up with what a title will be, but it always starts with something that in hindsight I look back and think, oh, that was pretty bland. I'm glad I changed that.
Well, I think you got a good one this time. So tell me, I think it's the Jack Ranger mystery series, right?
Jack Chastain.
Okay, Jack Chastain, sorry.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so tell me about Jack. So he's a ranger with the National Park Service, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, and I don't know that much about their roles. I mean, I see them walking through the parks when I take hikes, and usually they're making sure people have their dogs on leashes or not breaking any of the other rules. How much reach or authority does he have to solve these mysteries?
Well, good question. And he's not someone with the kind of background you typically think would be solving mysteries, because I think most people think of murders, somebody breaking laws and things like that. And I've used murders in the last two books, but Jack is not that. He's not a law enforcement guy, but there are principal characters in the books that are. But being a ranger is more than that. They are people that save lives. There are people that find people that are lost. There are people that respond to fires, respond to rescues, etc. And there's another side of park stories that many visitors may not ever see. It's the conflicts that happen with people that want to do different things to those lands or use those lands in different ways, or feel entitled to prevail in a battle, to a fight. And in the course of my career, I had experience with a lot of those kind of political suspense sort of situations. I would say, particularly in my final job, when I was the chief biologist for the agency. But when you work at a place like Yosemite or Grand Canyon or Zion, you're going to run into folks that you're going to be involved in issues that are pretty major. And I did not want to write a story about any of those places because I feared people would look at the characters and say, is this me, or is this issue that I was a part of, and stuff like that. So I invented a national park in New Mexico on the border with Colorado, where I could use my own imagination to create conflicts and mysteries that Jack could be pulled into. Rarely does he go diving in to go pursue. He gets pulled into them and has to figure out what's going on to solve the mystery. And again, I did not want to tell a story that is doing a blow of things that have really happened. So I was pulled into fiction. Jack himself, I'll have to admit, through much of my career, I had to wear that uniform, that same uniform that rangers do, law enforcement rangers do, or interpretive rangers, naturalists do. And I would think, hold it, if I encounter some colleague in another agency, they're going to wonder, is this guy really a scientist or a resource manager, or what have you? So I remember a part of my career where I kind of pushed back on that because I had to, command the respect of colleagues in other agencies, etc. But as I went through my career and as I encountered people in the writing of my books, the ranger is a very special character in the minds of the public. And even though Jack would not be a guy that would call himself a ranger, the public would, because they see him in that uniform, that hat, wearing that badge.
Okay.
And as I think I said a minute ago, this is a guy that's hardwired to the mission of the Park Service. Very dedicated. Very common of the people that work for the Park Service. That's not a stretch to say. You'll find them all over the agency. You'll probably find that true of a lot of people who work in government in general. They're there because they want to serve a purpose. They want to serve society in some way, and they're dedicated to a mission, not to becoming wealthy or famous or what have you. They want meaningful work. Jack is one of those. And he, my publicist says, Jack couldn't tell a lie if his life depended on it. He's one of those kinds of guys. And I wrestled with, as I was working on what person Jack Chastain was going to be, I wrestled with this conventional wisdom that the characters need character flaws. And I got to admit, I get a little bored with characters that have character flaws. So I decided in the end, instead of a flaw, he's going to be damaged.
Oh.
He's going to be damaged by what happened to him in Montana, and he's going to carry that with him. And he has to get past that in places. But I hope I've created an honorable guy that people relate to. I'm told that is the case. And I think I've answered the question. Stop me from rambling.
No, yeah. But I think a character flaw can be someone who is too involved or overly caring in their work to their own personal detriment, right? Some of those people are so into the mission that they're giving their 100% to that mission, and they're losing other things in their lives, which can be, I mean, it's a good flaw, right? It's like when you go into a job interview and they ask you for a character flaw, and you give one that's like, I work too much.
Well put. So maybe I've got that covered. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think you do, right? And I think, so in this most recent book, Migration of the Butterflies and Lies, speak to the migration part, because what is the mystery or the quest that he's trying to solve in this book?
Yeah. In fact, the Lynn Stegner, the woman who edited this book, for a while wondered if I needed to drop the word migrations out of it. But I think I think the people that read it, and she came around to thinking, no, migrations needs to be in there. Jack chases a rumor all the way down to Mexico, trying to figure out whether this one person in the book could be involved in something that Jack can't imagine that he would be, but he's being accused of it, and Jack can't ask the character, "Are you involved in this sort of thing?" And finds himself in desperation going down to Mexico to talk to somebody that he knows will know the answer to that question, and finds out when he's down there that this person's husband, the butterfly biologist, has just been murdered. And there's nothing to suggest those two murders are connected. The murder and the missing archaeologist. The reader knows, by the way, in chapter 1, that the archaeologist is dead too. Jack does not know that until the end of the book. But Jack goes to Mexico, learns that about this other fellow who's died, explores trying to get at the truth involving this friend of his, and finds that there's a series of lives that have made their way across not only places in Piedras Coloradas National Park and National Monument, the places where Jack works, but have followed into Mexico. And I really shouldn't get into much detail there because I might give away some of the plot, but that's where the migrations comes from.
And tell me, it seems obviously you worked in the Park Service, so that must have given you a lot of background. What other themes do you hope to convey in these books?
Well, interestingly, we've talked about a number of them. Conservation. I try not to harp on those subjects. I try to give Jack some appreciation of certain things that maybe a reader would too, and understand why conservation of certain things is important. But I don't do any preaching about that. I probably am more guilty of preaching and I'm not. I shouldn't use that word. But I do, after having a long career in the Park Service and seeing people have questions about the integrity of people or locking on to some rhetoric that serves some purpose, somebody else's interest, I don't mind showing folks that the people actually that work in these agencies, they are dedicated to their cause. And sometimes you need to ask the question yourself, could there be some other reason those people are spreading these kinds of stories about these kinds of people? Could they be trying to achieve something? What else would I say to that?
So maybe like looking at the whole picture and making sure you see things for what they are. That sounds a little bit like what you're trying to get across.
Yeah. And that I would call political suspense of the job. Let's see if I can come up with a good example of when I was at you don't want me to get into long stories, but in my final job, I was as chief biologist. We were working on some stuff to reduce the use of lead in parks, ammunition, fishing lures, etc. And I was the counterpart to the people that are the directors of Fish and Wildlife in the States. And twice a year, I'd meet in meetings with all 50 directors and people from other federal agencies. And I was asked one time to speak to that issue and put on the stage, asked by if I would kind of debate this topic with a state director from somewhere in New England. And as I got up and I spoke to the issue, I didn't have any trouble responding to the questions, the assertions that they were making. But I saw that as the thing went on, that other guy got really, 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 really nervous. And he kept looking in certain directions. So I started paying attention to where he was looking. And against the back wall were all these industry reps. And they were staring him down. He was supposed to take me out in that discussion. I'm going to go after him. And yet I had answers for the things that he had to say. Those are common sorts of things in life, in politics. You see it right now every day on the news. Somebody, putting pressure on someone to go after someone else. And I thought those things are so interesting. I bet I could use those. Someday I endeavor to write some stories, and I've used those kinds of circumstances to create some tension for my poor protagonists and other folks. Jack Chastain throwing some situations that he has to handle.
Right. Tell us about the other characters. And do the same characters go through each book, or does he get to see a new group of characters in each book?
Well, he gets to see some new characters in each, but there's a handful that are in each of the books. One fellow, Kip Culberson, is a former state senator that in book one was an enemy to Jack. And by the end of the book, he was no longer an enemy. He became an ally that goes through all of the books. Kelly Culberson is his daughter, and she is in all of the books as a very major character. And I'll tell her story. In this book, in Migrations, she is a U.S. senator because of something she did in Killing Godiva's Horse, the book before this one. But she was not in the outline that I originally wrote for Public Trust, my first book. And I guess I didn't go over the titles of all of them. Public Trust, The Height of the Sea, Killing Godiva's Horse, The Migrations of Butterflies and Lies. Kelly was not in that first outline. And as I was writing these scenes of conflict that were very kind of common to the things that I dealt with on the job, and I was still working when I was working on this book, I got to the point where I needed a break from the conflict. And I thought Jack did too. So I gave Jack, I put him on this little hike into these places where he'd encounter these things of natural wonder, the kind of things that he loved to go do. And I had him encounter this woman on the trail out where he was hiking. And I kind of enjoyed writing the scene, but I was rather self-conscious about it. And the editor that for that book looked at it and said, this needs to be a bigger scene, and there needs to be 3 scenes like this in the book. This is important. So I went back and did that, made that a bigger, important scene. But what was interesting about it was, as I was writing her, it was this, you probably have experienced this very thing, but this was the first time for me. Here was a character that took over themselves. She almost started writing her own dialogue. She did, it felt like. And I had heard people say that before in the past, and I thought, yeah, right. Yeah. But she did. And I was just blown away by it. And I loved the feeling of it. It's happened several times in other books with other characters since, but she took charge of herself, and she became an important character in that book, and she's carried through. I'm very fond of her, and so is Jack.
A little tidbit there.
Yeah.
He has more of a life outside of his ranger duties. At least giving him something, right?
You wouldn't believe the number of times I've been asked if Jack Chastain is me and if it's Kelly is my wife. And I'll have to say, no.
So what's next? When did Butterflies come out?
It came out a little over a month ago.
Oh, okay. So this is a new release for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Fun. So what's next for Jack? Are you still writing his story?
Well, that backstory I told you about, it will not be completely resolved until the next book is written. So
Okay.
that one will have all the answers to what had happened in Montana. And as Jack learns more, as I say, he heals, but he also learns more about really what happened. He thought he knew, but did he really?
Okay.
This story here, the Mayans, I don't know if it's wise to say this or not. Juan Rivera's story is woven through the story as if it's critical. It's the story, the spread of this rumor about a real Spanish explorer. Juan Rivera was the first person of European descent to come into what is now Colorado, leading 2 explorations looking for gold and silver. Found a little silver, didn't stir much interest, was largely forgotten by history. A few decades ago, his journals were found in the Spanish military archives, and it was learned that his journals were used by Escalante and Dominguez. If you know those 2 names, they are well-known Spanish explorers from that region of the world. But Juan Rivera was there first. The book is written in such a way as to weave that through the novel, but that is really only one of the threads. This is a multi-plot story, and more of the plots are tied to the spread of conspiracy theories. One of these little elements that our society is having to deal with today.
Interesting. Yeah, so we're getting lots here. We're getting history, we're getting geography, we're getting environment, we're getting political suspense.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have almost everything in here. A little romance, maybe.
Yeah, there's a little romance in there too. Yes.
You have to have Jack and Kelly married at the end, maybe.
Yeah, I keep wondering about that. Yeah. Now they're in a new situation where she's in Washington and he's back in New Mexico.
No, that's not going to work out so well.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in book 5.
Could be a challenge.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Thank you so much for talking about your books with us. Where can we find you and your books if you'd like to?
Well, right now you can find them on Amazon and Barnes and Noble pretty easily, and also on my website. There's some Shopify links that they can get it through. Mary, my publicist, is setting up bookstore readings. I've got a couple of libraries that have reached out to me, and I've gotten invitations to go speak with them. But bookstores, that'll probably be winding up more in April and May and June. So we'll see. I hope that we get them picked up in a number of bookstores. We'll see.
That's a lot of fun. Yes. So author J.M. Mitchell, and is your website J.M. Mitchell as well?
You can find it on prairieplumpress.com.
Okay, prairieplumpress.com for our podcast listeners. And J.M. Mitchell, author, his most recent book is Migration of Butterflies and Lies. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.